Followed Through the Woods by Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a story for you that dates back to the 20th century when my family used to go camping together twice a year, once in spring just before summer, and once in autumn just before the winter. Don't ask me why. It had something to do with what days my father could get off. These were generally fun vacations in the woods, as we rarely ventured very far from safety or well-worn paths. The most memorable of all our vacations, though, was the one that I almost didn't return home from. I'm going to tell you the story about how I nearly didn't make it out. The night when I got followed through the woods by the Dogman. When my family went camping in those days, it meant my father, my mother, my younger sister, and me all camping together in the Waterloo State Recreation Area in Michigan. We'd move from campground to campground, but we had a few favorite spots we all loved to return to. Interestingly, the time I got chased by the Dogman, my family and I were only camping in this eastern campground for the first time. The last place we camped, a bit to the west, seemed to disturb my sister. She kept claiming that she saw a giant, intelligent dog there. It led to family battles, with my father insisting that she be sent to a psychiatrist. Finally, a truce was called, and we agreed to camp in this other area, closer to the town of Chelsea, Michigan. Even though she had gotten the rest of us to concede, my sister bailed on us, claiming that there really was an intelligent dog in those woods, and she was certain it would remember her scent and find her again. We all thought she lost her mind. We were not very charitable or forgiving toward my sister. I don't think we ever even took 1 second to consider that she may have actually had a real and terrifying encounter of some sort. So I suppose what happened later was divine justice, if anything related to the Dogman can have anything divine about it. In this newer camping area that my parents and I were staying in that autumn, there was a path through the woods toward a road leading to town that had a gas station and general snack and food store. Each time I went to take that shortcut, though, one of the regulars would stop me and tell me that it was better to walk the long way around and to stay out of those woods. When I started to ask them what was so scary inside of those trees, I started to hear story after story, each one sounding to me even wilder than the one before it. This middle-aged lady told me that the last time she walked that dirt path, she saw a face staring at her from behind a tree off in front of her to the side. She said that she just turned around and left the way she came in. I asked her what kind of a face she saw. She said it was the face of a hairy, werewolf-like monster. I nearly snorted, but I kept a straight face because she didn't look like she was joking. She kept going on in a very serious way about how the head she had seen was neither a dog head nor was it that of a man. By that point, I was 90% certain that she was just playing me, so I filed it under a lazy attempted prank and tried to forget about it. She seemed very sincere about me now walking through those woods, though, so I took the long way around instead. Maybe, I thought, the prank is to get me to take the long way around just by making up a monster story. The next time I was sent on an errand to the store, it was a kid close to my own age who stopped me and told me that path was too dangerous to walk on. He even offered to lend me his bike so that I could make it through faster and avoid what he called the monster. Why would he offer to give his bike to a total stranger like me, unless he really believed there was a monster living in those woods? If these people were playing a prank on me, they were sure going to great lengths to make it seem realistic. That kid looked so certain that I wouldn't survive a walk through those trees that I just had to ask him, what the heck is going on? What he told me was not a friend of a friend's story. What he told me was something that he claimed happened to him personally. This kid told me this happened the first time his family camped in that campgrounds, like 4 years earlier. He was walking his small yappy dog, and the dog seemed to suddenly get overly interested in a weird-looking decayed tree stump off the side of the pathway, set back in the trees a ways. When the guy looked over to see what his little pooch was yowling and growling about, he said he saw that tree stump stand straight up as it began to make some yowling and growling sounds of its own. Looking at the tree stump in a new way, he was amazed to see glowing eyes and bloody white teeth where they did not seem to belong. Soon, the overall silhouette told him that he was not looking at a tree. He was looking at some sort of dog-headed, bipedal beast. Grabbing up his little dog, the guy ran back to camp and was grateful when the upright Dogman did not follow. I told that guy, well, I don't have any little yappy dogs with me, so I feel certain I'll be fine. He looked at me with such pleading eyes that finally I just gave up and walked the longer, better-lit way around to go to the store. I still wasn't believing any of these stories, but I was beginning to accept that these nutty people camping around there sure believed them. After that, I heard a weird story about that path through the woods told to me by a librarian of all people. I remember as she told me the story, I was thinking, so librarians can go insane too. Looking back on it, her story wasn't really all that crazy, but at the time I just equated all reports of cryptids with either hoaxes or delusions. According to this nice librarian, who I guess was in her late 20s or early 30s at the time, she was walking on that dirt shortcut through those woods with a girlfriend of hers when her friend insisted that someone was throwing pebbles at them. She told her friend it must be the wind blowing acorns out of the trees, but her friend pointed out that they were walking under fir trees. When both of them saw one of the pebbles land sharply in the dirt at their feet, kicking up a small cloud of dust in the process, they realized they were being warned away from the area, and they ran back to camp. She said they never saw who was throwing the pebbles, but she was certain it was the Michigan Dogman. I asked her how she didn't know it wasn't some kids tricking her, but she seemed certain that it was the Dogman, even without having seen one single hair on his upright walking head. The next time my father asked me to take a run to the store, he decided to go with me. His intent was to walk the path with me to show me that there were no monsters and werewolves in the trees waiting to get me. He was sick of waiting for me to walk the entire long way around each time. As we were about to walk down to the path, this old man wearing a Gilligan hat stopped us and told us that the path was too dangerous. This infuriated my father, and he demanded to know if this old Gilligan guy was the one who was filling my head with werewolf stories. We both insisted we had never spoken before, which was true. Then the old guy told us a story that was so scary. It made me frightened just to be standing there so close to the pathway that the story happened on. I just got a shiver all over remembering that moment. According to Mr. Gilligan, he saw a sort of Sasquatch in those woods, but a kind of Sasquatch that resembles a wolf more than it resembles an ape or a human. The head is lupine. The legs and tail are as well, but it stands erect on those two wolf-like hind legs and has a torso resembling a fur-covered man, more than it resembles anything that is actually known to exist. My father was scoffing at this man's assertions when a female friend of the man came over to tell us of her cryptid encounter along that same pathway. According to this lady camper, she was marching through those woods one night, heading to the store closer to town. Off on the side of the dirt pathway, she saw what she thought was a large black dog sitting there and cooling off after a warm day. She walked over toward the canine to see if it was friendly, because she has a natural love of animals. Well, as she got within maybe 5 feet of the dog, the thing, which was facing away from her, suddenly rose to its full height on its hind legs and casually but swiftly walked away into the woods. To say that this was a surprise to the woman would be an understatement, as she claimed she fainted dead away on the spot. When one of the other campers woke her up, she had no memory at first of what had happened, or how she had come to be lying face down on the dirt leading out of those haunted woods over there. By the next morning, all the memories had pieced themselves back together, and she realized she had narrowly escaped a horrible death at the hands of the Dogman. By this point, my father was disgusted, not just with those of us present, but with the entire human race. He decided to go off to the store by himself, taking the dreaded shortcut through those woods. I went home to our campsite and somberly informed my mother that her husband might not make it back because he took the shortcut through the woods that everyone knows the Dogman lives in. She didn't seem as upset as she should have been, but I figured she might have been in a state of shock. When Dad came back acting as though everything were normal, I was the one who was shocked. I had been listening to so many scary stories about the Dogman living somewhere along that dark pathway that I really didn't even expect my own father to survive the round trip. I got up the nerve to ask Dad if he'd seen the Dogman. He lost his temper at me. He shouted that he didn't care if the woods were filled with bears and tigers and alligators, because he was a man, and so was I. We were the top of the food chain, and as long as we walked around like we owned the place, nothing in that forest was going to dare to mess with us. He made me repeat his words back to him, and then made up some nonsense about it being the family motto or something. Basically, what I took from this was that I had no more excuses, and the next time I was ordered to go to the store, I was going to get in a lot of trouble if I didn't take the shortcut through Dogman Woods. That entire part of Michigan is one protected natural area after another, and there are a number of regions in there with rumors about both Sasquatch and the Michigan Dogman. Even back then, there were a large number of reports of both types of creatures in Michigan, but my family had never heard of any of that. This is why I laughed at my poor sister, and this is why my family laughed at poor me. We had no idea that sightings of this dog-headed man-like animal were far more common than we could have guessed. Knowing that back then would have definitely helped me, probably helped my sister, and possibly helped my mom. My father wouldn't have cared either way, since he was sort of opposed to the idea of cryptids on principle. Dad just couldn't believe in the concept of a world crazy and imaginative enough to allow creatures such as Dogman to exist. Heck, he couldn't even accept the existence of half the musical acts I listened to in those days. Dad wanted everything he didn't like to be wished away to the cornfield. Back then, when you acted like that, they called you a right-wing Archie Bunker. These days, when you act like that, they call you a left-wing Twitter influencer. Dad had an annoying way of making me feel guilty for things that weren't my fault, and getting me to apologize when I hadn't even done anything wrong. By the next time I was inevitably asked to take a run to the store to get supplies for my parents, I was eager to go. Well, at least I was impatient to get it over with. My mother had given me a pep talk in which she carefully never said that there was no such thing as the Dogman. Instead, she pointed out that, assuming the creatures did exist, they must be so rare that the chances of having more than one sighting in a lifetime would be next to zero. Therefore, according to my mother, my father's advice about walking through the forest like you owned the place was actually a good idea. A fast-moving, confident target is less appealing than one that exudes doubt or fear. And so, there I found myself, essentially speed walking, even though I'm not sure the term even existed yet. I was racing through the scariest forest outside of a dream sequence in a horror movie. I kept my head facing directly forward, trying to notice as little peripherally as I could. I didn't want to see anything that might freak me out or get me scared. I just wanted to see well enough not to trip over something. When I got out through to the street on the other side, I felt a sense of triumph unlike any I had experienced up to that moment. My father was right. My mother was right. And I had grown up a little bit. I felt like I had just achieved a new superpower, and once I got all the supplies, I was looking forward to the way back. Heck, I would even go so far as to say I was excited about it. And the best part would be that my father wouldn't have to give me that disappointed look he always gave me. At least for one night. Well, at least for one instance on one night, my father could feel like I wasn't a complete embarrassment. That was what he always used to answer when I'd ask him what he wanted for his birthday. He'd say, "What I want for my birthday is for you to stop being such an embarrassing failure." Then he and Mom would get into a big argument, and I could leave and do whatever I felt like for a couple hours. Well, now was my chance to give my father what he actually wanted most from me, and it was going to be so easy to do. I just had to walk through the same wooded dirt path I had just speed walked through, and the hero would return with boons for his tribe, or in this case, potato chips and batteries. The part of the woods where you had to go to start heading back to camp looked almost enchanted during the day when I saw it back in the spring. Birds were tweeting. I think there was a butterfly. It was magical. Looking at the same spot at night, though, it was the most dimly lit part of a very dimly lit block. I felt that fear return, shooting straight up my back in 1 second or less, undoing all the work I had done to psych myself out for this assignment. I closed my eyes because looking into that black hole of nature I had to walk down was only making me more nervous. With my eyes shut, I tried to remember something my father had told me. It went something like, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for I am the meanest SOB in the valley." I think he got that in a Christmas card from one of his coworkers or something. I told myself a few times that I was the meanest SOB in the valley, and then it was time to open my eyes and enter those dark woods. Well, if I speed walked confidently on the way there, I sort of skipped and jogged nervously on the way back. It seemed like there were little sounds coming from every direction, and I spent as much time looking behind me and gasping as I did looking forward and guiding myself back to camp in the most efficient manner. In all the stories I had heard of the Dogman appearing in front of people, blocking their ability to advance and forcing them to turn around and reverse course, what I was experiencing was the sensation of being followed, which only made me scoot along faster than usual, just out of nervousness. And then, I both heard it and saw it at the same time. The creature emerged out onto the path about 100 feet behind me, and I could see it from head to foot. This was a man. An extremely lithe, athletic, and badass kind of individual, standing there with no fear of me or anything else. At the same time, this was some kind of an animal. Yes, it stood on its hind legs like some kind of chimera, like something out of ancient mythology, but it was mainly a savage animal. It might have intelligence approaching that of our own species, but that intelligence, if it truly exists, does so in the service of the basest of inhuman natures. This was like seeing the devil himself, although I clearly don't mean that literally. Or maybe I do. I mean, who am I to say how the devil should present himself? I know that what I saw was evil, as in pure, abject, objective, unapologetic evil. and I understood why I had been warned to stay off his radar so many times. I ran. I ran while listening to the thumping of my heartbeat in my ears. I could also feel the thumping of the great beast's feet landing hard into the ground behind me. After some period of running, I could no longer tell the difference between the thumping of my heart and the thumping of the Dogman. I remember being locked in the state of maybe until I made it back out of the woods. People were staring at me as I was pale and winded. I didn't mind, because if they were looking at me and not looking behind me, then that meant I wasn't getting followed anymore. I brought the supplies to my parents, but it was not a joyous victory lap as I had hoped. My father could tell that I just lived through a bad experience, and that caused him to be disappointed in me. I kept the story to myself for most of the rest of his life, and I felt guilty for embarrassing my father. But when I look back from a modern perspective, I see myself surviving an ordeal. It wasn't something either of us could understand at the time, but that's how I think about it now. At least, that's how this old man has chosen to rationalize my trauma, resulting from the time when I got followed through the woods by Dogman. Megara. She's from over there. She's tippity top time. She's Megara Opheim. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer Megara Opheim for making this episode possible. In exchange, she gets to see our weekly secret uncensored Dogman stories, as well as other perks that Henry Lee Dogman is about to inform you of right now. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.